Hello, everybody. Welcome to L&D Talk. Today is Wednesday. That means it's BizOps Wednesday. My co-host Ajay Pengakar is not here for the next few Wednesdays, and so Khan from Australia has decided to sit in the co-host seat, and our second co-host, our extra special guest, we'll call him Anthony, is here today. And today, basically what we're going to do is just finish off our conversation from last week.
L&D Talk, we're talking learning and delivering our people. L&D Talk, right here on blab.im on the L&D Talk. We're on the Twitters too, talking with, not to you, talking about all the things you do. Yeah, on L&D Talk. Now give your warmest welcome to your L&D Talk host, Brent Schlenker.
All right, welcome everybody. Yeah, welcome to Wednesday, BizOps Wednesday. So you got an outstanding suggestion for us to just jump in, Anthony, and pick up where we left off last week. Who would like to take a stab at just sort of recapping and setting the stage of last week's conversation?
Anthony, all yours.
Oh, okay. So I think where we were last week, where the conversation ended, we were talking about the business, the mechanics of the e-learning industry, and it really occurs to me there really is no e-learning industry per se because it's so fragmented by market. And the way I see it, and I could definitely be wrong. Maybe I'm not seeing it with enough clarity. You've got the ones who are internal. They're the business training where I'm training my coworkers. That's it. You've got the ones who are training public-facing folks where you sell content, possibly probably retail. You're selling directly to the consumer of the content,
Yep.
Or the kind of the hybrid where maybe I'm selling to Brent. I'm selling content. Brent is looking for content on OSHA, how to climb a ladder. I don't know. A lot of times it's health and safety type training. So I'm selling to Brent, who is then selling internally to his teams. And what works for one really doesn't always work for the other. And a lot of the time, the conversations that we have, and I'm giving you this too, especially on the Twitter chats, I'll say something because I'm thinking, well, yeah, I sell content straight to the public, and everybody's, and people's, yeah, but this is, this corporate training, we don't do this. Well, yeah, but I'm e-learning too, dudes.
Yep. And you're right. Good point, Anthony. Very good point. And I suppose in last week's conversation, I came from that centralised L&D department that is attending to the needs of its organisation and its employees. And probably in the circles that I mix, and probably not wide circles, but anyway, the circles that I mix, it's probably that's the kind of conversations we're having. But what you did bring to the fore last week was something that probably not a lot of us in these circles consider or even contemplate, which is those two other options, what we might call the resellers or the ones that are directly selling to the consumer. Having said that, what we need to look at is then, from a centralised L&D department and the evaluation, the measurement and the effectiveness, what we were talking about last week, of learning, or we want to call it the ROI of learning, there is a certain methodology or a few methodologies you can use. What I would like to do today is think about, in those other options we talked about, the reseller or the seller to the consumer, what are some of the options we can think about in determining the effectiveness of that training? Have you got any thoughts on that, Anthony, around, let's say in your situation, how do you determine your effectiveness?
They come back.
Okay.
That's, really, because we're selling to the consumer, and some of it is going to depend on the training, really. So, if it's a case of, if I'm selling directly to the consumer, it's very difficult to get direct results. If you're doing like health and safety, look at, all right, well, did ER calls in the area go down? You know, there's indirect ways to do things. If you're selling training, my daughter actually took her driver's ed course, the book part on, you know, the legal and, you know, how long you have to stop before, you know, a stop sign or whatever. She did all that online. Well, you can, now what they do then is they coordinate with insurance companies to say, all right, you know, what are your accident, you know, these students took our course, how many of them have had accidents versus what is the normal for people this age. So, you know, in that case, they can show, well, according to, you know, Dick Buttkiss Auto Insurance Agency, which I don't think exists, so no one can sue. The people who took our course have on accident two accidents per capita per year, but their average is 5 accidents per capita per year. Okay, our stuff is working, so you can show indirectly. But because you don't have any control over these people, you don't have any direct contact with these folks, that's very difficult. So a lot of the times we come back they come back.
Yeah.
You know, they come back for more training. But that raises another problem for us is, you know, we can't, whereas with within corporate entertainment, within corporate education, corporate training, you know what, I'm just going to show you a slide deck that says do A, do B, do C, Bob's your uncle, have a great day. I have to be sexy, which, okay, the screen image pretty much proves that's never going to happen. So, okay, fine. But, you know, I've got to be entertaining. I've got to sell something that people want to sit in front of and learn from. So,
but do you worry about the quality? I mean, that's one thing is about them coming back. But what don't you have some sort of internal validation on the quality of the product you're producing as well?
Internally, a lot of the companies that I work with, they'll test internally to show, or they'll do, you know, now you can use XAPI. See, you can use XAPI.
I had to get it in.
Take a drink. You can use XAPI to coordinate, you know, all right, people are actually watching the videos, and we know that they're not just watching the video, they're actually consuming it, digesting it, because we can correlate, okay, well, this test answer is answered in this video, and, you know, we can see that people who are getting this test answer right are watching the video, people who are not watching the video are not getting the test answer. You know, we can kind of coordinate things like that.
It's the data that's the most important, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
we can put content out there, and if we don't have some sort of feedback mechanism, whether it's just data, usage data, or direct feedback, you know, from the users, the learners themselves, then there is no way for us to tell really, and there has to be some sort of metric for us to look at. But one of the things I wanted to bring up just briefly too is that go ahead.
Oh, that's actually, I just want to finish this. The problem we run into, though, is do people come back because of the quality? You know, they're actually learning stuff, or are they coming back because we have cool videos, or, you know, because we have cool music, or, you know, it looks neat? You know, it's because, I mean, you know, and let's be honest, nobody's going to see the new Transformers movie because it's good, but people go see it
because it's entertaining.
Yeah, because it's entertaining. And so that's where all that data starts to fall apart for us is, well, they're coming back, but we can't scientifically prove why.
Well, see, taking that concept then, Anthony, to that other model, the internal L&D department, just because they're coming back, yes, there could be a measure, but doesn't mean it's effective. So if I take that, so in your situation, if I take it in my situation, the coming back is a measure, but it's not a measure that I would like to put out to an executive committee or group and say, look, they're coming back. You know what they're going to say? The only reason they're coming back on because you're the only one that's bloody producing anything. So that's why they're coming back. Where else are they going to go? Although
let me push back on the conversation a little bit here. So if we're talking about the same users coming back, aren't they actually? And if they're taking the same course, aren't they then applying what we would call spaced repetition and consuming content multiple times, wouldn't that have some sort of educational or learning effect that was maybe unintended?
Oh no, it was intended.
Okay.
I mean, if they're coming back, it's because that course was designed with a termed certification period where they have to take that
Oh,
course.
they have to come back.
Yeah.
Well, do they have options to go other places to get that certification?
Maybe not. Maybe Anthony's the only one that's providing that certification. So if they're coming back, so if they're coming back, they maybe have to come back to him or her or that organisation because they're the ones that got that accreditation of, or the ability to provide that certification.
Yeah.
So, but you're right, Brett. You make a good point about, the voting by the feet or the old bumps on seats or the accesses or the clicks of the links. So, what does that particular metric provide us, if anything? We need to dig deeper.
Well, I mean,
what does it provide us?
Well, yeah, and extend the sort of the idea of what we talk about all the time, right? We talk about, training in and of itself is just sort of a one-time event. But if you're applying that content over the long learning process, right? If we're understanding that learning is a process over time, and maybe all I'm saying is that maybe people watching the same training content over and over and over again, it could, maybe fall into that category of them over a long period of time consuming the same content. Maybe isn't such a bad thing.
No, and you're right. There is. It's not. I mean, if they're going to, again, if they have to pay for the reuse of the content, maybe that's where they need to. There's a bit of a blocker. But if they're coming back and they're actually paying for it again, or there's another cost added to it, or whatever the case may be, then that would mean to me something more than just they're coming back because they've actually had to forego something. Apart from time, they've actually foregone a few more extra dollars to learn the same content because they had to do it again or they revisited. That to me also means that it's quality because they've come to this, they've enjoyed it, they got something out of it, so they're coming back to it again. Does that make sense? As in, they've actually had to dig deep in their pockets, so therefore if they're coming back again and they have to dig in their pockets again, that means that there is some value.
It does. It doesn't make sense, but so we have to kind of take this back to. I know we're using Anthony as an example, but I think Anthony's particular case is an outlier, right? I don't think all of us have that same situation where you have a massive audience that is compelled to retake your content specifically from you over and over and over again. And that's exceptionally unique.
Well, I mean, and the one company that I work with, there is competition. And it comes back to motivation too. And Leslie brings up a great point. So much bad e-learning happens because people have to do it, not because they want to, which sometimes gives e-learning a really bad image or a bad name. And that's absolutely true. And it does also put us in kind of a weird spot of where, you also have to look at the motivation of the training content. So when you look at especially, well, no, I'm not, I'm going to walk that back. When you look at regulatory or compliance training, whether it's something that you sell externally to the customer or retail, or if you're selling internally to your health and safety team or your machinists team or whatever, you come across this question of, well, the compliance often just says it's a checkbox on an insurance form. Did Anthony take this course? Yes, he did. Doesn't ask if I passed, doesn't ask if I learned anything, doesn't ask how well I did. It just asks, did I take the training?
Yeah.
And, hey, yep, here he did. Here's the cert. Check. So, so then the motivation becomes, well, is it just to get this box check or is it to actually train? Right. And when you're public facing now, well, I've got to sell this. So I just need you to be entertained enough to take my course for 2, 3, 4 hours and come back next year so I make bank, you check your box, and we both walk away happy.
Yeah. And it's certainly valid, right? I think we all deal with that from a compliance perspective, and everybody understands that if you've got a an audience that is forced to be in your training that you've created. You've got you have different expectations and whatnot, but let's put that aside and let's approach some of the other areas, right? We talked about more than just one. We talked about the internal segment of training, so employee training. We talked about creating training for sale and the off-the-shelf sort of courses, and we do those as well. And then also needing to sell. Well, that's part of the same thing, but I think sales and creating certifications for your distribution channels is another one that we talked about that is a little bit different. It's kind of similar as selling, just straight to the general population. But if you have a focused, specific type of population, I do think that changes the demographic, just a little bit. So
and that other market we were talking about, Brent, was about the market. Like say, there's you create content to sell to an organization who then resells it. So maybe I know the Litmos does that, but I create a package, I then put it out in the market, so various providers will pick it up and put it on their platforms to resell to their clients. And I think that one there is a bit different from what Anthony was talking before about what I would call the business to consumer, as opposed to the business to consumer, which might have that extra B in between. So in that situation, again, it comes down to, what is the measure? What is the metric that we can use? And I think there's some comments coming through in the board here around, if I'm a provider of that training to, let's say, Litmos, why would you come back to me for more content for your customers? Well, it could be because your customers are buying. It could be because your customers are ticking the box more effectively and efficiently because mine is a cheaper course than probably what Anthony's providing. But it also could be because you and I have got a very good relationship. You know my abilities, you know my skills, you know what I'm good at, and you know what I can provide. And therefore, that's why you are buying from me. So therefore, there is that personal relationship as opposed to anyone else out there in the market that may be able to provide a similar course. So it comes down to the personal approach, the relationship the individuals have in that business to consumer, as opposed to the business to consumer. It's more that what we'll call that litmus test, which is the hard sell. Will they come back? Will they come back for more? Whereas you and I, we've got a relationship. You might come back to me because I'm trustworthy. You know me. I'm reliable, whatever the case may be. You see where I'm getting at? Anthony, you understand what I was on about?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, now I'm in the fun situation that I'm in all three markets. So I work with training that is meant for in-house for, sales or whatever. I work in the consumer, but I also work in situations, like I said, where I would sell to brands who would then either use that training in-house or sell externally, like a Skillsoft model or something. Yeah. So there's definitely, there are some similarities there, but yeah, definitely the business model there is very different. And, as Con was talking, he says, it could be because it's good content. It could just be because we have a really great relationship and you know my product and you trust me. It could just be that I undercut the other guy by $100 a seat.
That's right.
Yeah, so this is BizOps Wednesday, and it's good that we're going down the BizOps side and why there's different sort of business reasons why different types of training are created. But let's just take 5 minutes, and because I know there's people out there, I've had these conversations too, that have said it doesn't matter, that learning is learning is learning is learning is learning, and we should be doing it all the same for all of those business markets, no matter what. Our processes and our models should be the same. Do you agree?
Oh,
they're absolutely naive, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to point, Sam Rogers has a great quote over here in the chat. Box checking is a fantastic topic, which is often at odds with what we mean by learning or providing real value to the business. And it gets back to, there's a great book I didn't write. I get no money off of this, but I always read Levitt and Dubner's Freakonomics, and then they have the follow-up, Super Freakonomics. And that is the single greatest book on data analysis and statistics and economics you will ever read, because they don't get into, well, think of this company does this, and so you should do it. No, they get into, I'm actually trying to think of a family-friendly example they talk about right now. Other ones that come to mind are drugs, prostitution, murder. Why the crime rate actually went down. Got news. It wasn't because of anything Congress did.
Why that data only works for that specific sort of segment of data.
But you have to look at the motivation. Why am I creating something? What am I looking to get out of it? And why are you buying it? What are you looking to get out of it? And the reality is there's different motivations for those three. And again, I'm breaking them up, these three. Maybe there's other ways I should be doing it.
Sure.
But there's different motivations behind each of those three modes of work. And depending on what that motivation is, I, as the producer, I'm going to produce things differently because I have different goals that I have to meet. If it's internal, it may just be checking a box and that's it.
Different learning goals or different business goals?
Different, and that's it.
Exactly.
Different business goals. And at the end of the day, you know what? There's a roof over my head because I'm paying for it. And for me to pay for it, someone's got to pay me.
Brent, I think that the point you make was really interesting. I was just, while Anthony was talking, I was sort of contemplating and reflecting on it. These people that are saying we do learn in the same way, maybe they're coming from the perspective of the instructional design principles we apply, the adult learning principles we apply. And to some extent, I can understand that, yes, when I'm developing for internal or when Anthony's developing for external, or whether you're developing business to consumer, we need to have some sort of quality standards embedded within that learning product. Otherwise, it's not going to meet any standards. So maybe we need to do learning the same way. Is about the way we structure, the way we cut it up, the way we determine our learning objectives. But Anthony makes a very good point around the market you're in and how you need to position the product for that market. So again, you were just saying learning outcomes or business outcomes. It's really a focus on what does Anthony, as a provider, and we use Anthony's example, and sorry about this, Anthony, but Anthony has that sort of seller to consumers directly, let's say. What does he need to get out of his product to make it attractive and sexy for those people to come back to him? Whereas I, as a learning development professional in an internal L&D department, maybe I'm not looking to make it sexy or entertaining, but I'm looking to make it effective and a bit more to the point and ticking that box for the organisation. So I think in the main game, just summarising, I think from an ID perspective, from a quality perspective, from a product perspective, yes, I think learning should all be done the same. But in relation to positioning it, promoting it, marketing it, and getting it out there, I think there needs to be some differentiation.
Yeah, you have to take your media production into consideration too when you're talking about products, right? There's certain processes and ways that you can push content to your internal employees, for example, that you would never in a million years push out to the customers that are paying for your product. If you're trying to train them on your product, you want a different level of quality than what you might just push out just to make sure that you're adding business value internally to your employee base. So, So I wonder if before the end of today, we could either start a document or a process or of some sort where we can start to define these different business segments, right? I think we've talked about a few, but I'm also sensing even in the live chat that we're falling prey to the same problems that our industry always has, and that's around semantics, right? What are the words that we use when we talk about these different business segments and the different types of learning products or events that we are creating in order to influence the learning process to each one of those different types of audiences?
I think it's a good point. It's a good opportunity for us to start capturing that and start differentiating those particular markets because, like we said from the beginning of the conversation, they are unique in their own ways, and we definitely need some sort of guidance and approach as to how we position, market structure, learning for each one of those markets.
So let's tackle it, right? Let's dive into it. I mean, I think the easiest one is employee training. Let's just start with that. I think everybody can agree that that's one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would we call it something else?
I usually refer to that as internal training.
Okay, internal training. Excellent. Any other terms? Anybody in the live chat want to add that might work?
Is that what Craig is calling necessary evil? May have just been bad timing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, I completely agree with you on the words. And just as point of fact, anyone who's ever tried to implement an LMS, the first thing you realize when you're talking to multiple vendors is how annoying that is when you stumble over something as trivial as a course. What is a course?
Yeah.
You know, in one LMS, a course is a catalog entry. In another, it's a session of a catalog entry. And, in this one, it's a scheduled instance. In this, it's an instance. This, it's a session. This, it's a course. This is an offering. This is a whatever.
Yeah.
We had a similar one, Anthony. We use I mentioned the LMS, the word capability. In one is a qualification, in the other one it's a competency, in the other one it's something else altogether. So the word capability just throws that.
All excellent points, but let me dial us back in here. Let's keep it simple, right? We can go way off the rails here, which I am certainly happy to do, and I'm quite good at it. But let me just try really hard to have a concisely recorded video of us maybe actually accomplishing something.
You want someone to blame. Okay.
So all right. So let's
okay. So
Anthony
calls it internal L&D. I call it corporate L&D. So I don't know if that's sort of because I think it's and I think the internal gives it that flavour of being embedded within the organisation. But I think most of us, I don't know if the chat will agree with me. Maybe people like Leslie or others, because I know Leslie, but with that corporate L&D is probably a term that we're used to. Workplace learning, yep, that's right. Could be one, yep. Yeah, so we can let's say call it internal L&D. I'm happy to go with that. Personally, I refer to it as corporate L&D.
So
I think Adam brings up workplace learning, and that includes nonprofits. The reason I go with internal versus workplace or corporate is because you also have, if you have a volunteer organization, they're not employees, they are not at a workplace necessarily, but it's still internal. So to me,
is that why it's good? Because I know Litmus does this, and I think it's valid, but maybe it's not in all situations. But is nonprofits and that type of the training that you would develop and deliver in those instances, would that be maybe a subset of internal or employee or corporate training, or is it two completely different things with maybe just a little overlap?
I think they're the same. I mean, if you look at a lot of volunteer organizations, how they treat their volunteers, what their volunteers are allowed to do, etc., almost 100% matches the employment laws for that area and that industry.
Yeah.
For example, if you have a church that has a soup kitchen, all of the safety regulations still apply. The hours that a minor is allowed to work still apply. Required breaks and things. All of that still applies, even to volunteers. So,
I think sometimes some of the motivational factors may be different.
Well.
But in essence, I think Anthony's on the money there. I think, you both internal or non-for-profit, they're all the same. But the motivational factors will vary from a non-for-profit because they really want to do it. They need to do it, and they understand the essence of doing it, and they understand what it means for them. Whereas in a corporate environment, it's the old, we said in the chat box before, the tick in the box, why am I here? Why do I have to do this for? Not another one. So it's but look, I think we need to move off this one, Brent, and let's just call it internal L&D, and we can settle on that pretty well, I think.
We'll do internal.
So actually, I'm not really too sure if we can. So let me.
Okay. I was trying to move you along, mate. I was trying to move you along, but anyway.
Yeah, no, it's good.
You were the one.
Move.
I am moving us along, but I think Laura brings up a very good point that I had sort of pocketed in the back of my mind that I definitely wanted to talk about today. And I would love to get everybody's feedback on a blog post that I just posted yesterday. I posted the link earlier in the chat. Let me post it again. And it's a little bit of a stream of consciousness blog. So it's not like nailed in stone. It was written, meant to start a conversation and to have people engage and to talk about it. But it feeds into this as far as your training department's maturity and the spectrum of maturity that you're in. So for example, the reason why I bring this up is, to Laura's point, when I think of corporate L&D, I think of massive, large enterprises, right? I don't see a small or medium-sized business that has an L&D department. They have a corporate training department. So and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, right? I'm just saying this is from my experience and through my lens of the world that we work in. To me, in the same way that Laura says, that L&D is a large organization that has an HR department. That HR department has decided that they want to do much larger initiatives around learning and development. And so they start a learning and development department that normally has a CLO or a director of learning and development. But within that exact same organization, right, it's so huge, many, many, many different divisions can have their own internal little training departments scattered throughout the entire business as a whole. So you've got corporate training and you've got corporate L&D. Does anybody else see that differentiation?
Honestly, no, because I'm looking at it from the way I'm differentiating it is from the audience. So where it's coming, so the size of the team, how that's structured, to me doesn't matter. That becomes a question of scale within that group.
Is it just terminology, or is it in the driver that has forced the hand, or not forced the hand, but the driver that made somebody say, you know what, we need this type of a department, right? I can't imagine that a startup company with, let's say, 50 employees or less, 20 employees, is going to immediately say, we need an L&D department. No, what they say is, we need to train our customers. We need some customer training. Okay, subject matter experts, engineer that created the product or whatever. We need you to can you get with the tech spec writer, contractor, and take some of the specs and turn that into training. Can make a PowerPoint. Okay, boom, let's deliver some training to some of these customers on this new product. The company starts to get a little bit bigger and they say, wow, you know what? We have a little more resources. Let's hire somebody to specifically handle that training that we've developed that started off with just the subject matter experts. Company gets a little bit bigger. Now the training team grows and is a little bit bigger. Then the company all of a sudden gets huge and they have an HR department with an HR leader, and the HR leader says, you know what, I really need somebody to manage the larger learning and development programs, like management leadership, like onboarding, like, all of the legal compliance stuff, right? I mean, does that?
I just don't, I don't hear a difference. I don't hear a difference in the product.
Okay.
That's but again, I'm looking at it from.
So we're talking about it from a business perspective, right? So talk from the business side.
Well, I mean, but again, so I'm looking at segregating and basing the terminology and everything based on the consumer, the target audience, and the targeted goal of the end product.
Okay.
So whether that comes from a multi-million-dollar Hollywood studio or a small indie film, you still have to get people who can act. You still have to have somebody who can direct. You still have to have somebody who knows how to work a camera, and you still have to have a story that people want to want to actually listen to and find compelling. The fact that one does it on a $300,000 budget and one does it on a $300 million budget realistically isn't relevant to those points. Yeah, you can get better actors or more noticeable or better draw actors. You can get better cameras. You can go the Michael Bay route and make everything explode. You can, so you have more special effects. You can shoot in more locations, whatever. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make your story better. That makes the production quality better.
Right.
Your story is still the story of a boy and his dog trying to find their way home.
Right. And I think this is my point, in that when we have these conversations as a industry, as a community of practitioners, we come at the conversations from very different angles, and we're also coming at the different topics using different words. And so I don't think this is something we can actually solve in an hour for sure. But
that's our biggest problem, Brent and Anthony. That's our biggest problem. It's the words and the language. I can see that coming through in the chat window there, the training versus learning and all those things. I'm not saying we need to get consistency, but at least we need to be on the same page when we're having a conversation. Right. And you're right about trying to set the scene about, and I really like that example you used about the startup and how you start small and there's no training department and it grows bigger. But then I can see Anthony's point where it's really the intended outcome. What are you trying to achieve? Anthony's coming to it from a point of view of the recipient, the final recipient, what I call the person that's impacted by the learning, whether it be your internal employee, whether it be your consumer, or whether it be a reseller who's also going to buy your product. At the end of the day, language is key to our conversations. Do we get consistency? We probably will never get it.
And I think, I think Adam's making some great points here. The learners don't care if you call it learning or training. And I would absolutely agree. From the learner's perspective, they don't care. They just want to, I would argue that I think the majority of people say, I need some training. If they buy a product, they won't say, can somebody give me some learning? They say, do you guys have any training that goes along with that? Or do you have any sort of documentation, right? Or they might refer to, I'd like to learn how to use your tool. Do you have any training that I can take?
Okay, but now there is a difference there. And I agree with everything you just said. If I'm a consumer, unless I work in that industry, I don't know the difference. Go to a car lot and they say, what kind of motor is in this car versus what kind of an engine in this car? An engineer is, going to go ram their head into a brick wall. Everyone else goes, oh, that's a V6. Well, you've never seen a V6 motor. Let me just explain that very quickly. They don't. It's just not physically possible. Sorry. To most people, it doesn't matter. However, for us now, but learning versus training, that is a big deal within the industry because they're two diametrically opposed terms. Training is giving, learning is receiving. It's the difference between feeding and eating.
So perfect. So let's just stop right there because that's a great statement. And that I think is really the point that I want us to kind of get solid on, because especially for this day, for BizOps Wednesday, I think our conversations, going forward will be specifically around that training side of it, because we're talking about the operations of a training department. What does that mean? And yes, in many cases, those receivers of what we are creating they don't care what we call it. And that's okay. But I think as long as we can all level set on that and say that how they view what we are creating, and they don't care about our process and how we got it to them, but for our purposes in getting better at what we do need to care about that. And in order to successfully have these conversations as an industry. So I would encourage us to go forward and look at that perspective. We're talking about how do you manage the training function within a corporation. There's conversations around that are kind of at times contradictory to what we might say if we were having a pure conversation about learning. and what the perfect learning solution might be is a very different conversation than what the practical operations, the constraint currently working in order to produce that event or that product is a very, very, very different conversation than somebody who's completely outside of the business constraints talking about learning and how to make the most optimal learning experience with no constraints whatsoever. Does that, did I kind of sum that up okay?
So basically, we're going to call it training from here on end.
Well, no, I mean, we don't have to, but let's just be clear about when.
I was just trying to summarize you in a couple of words.
Yeah, so let's just be clear about when we use the term training in this context. That's what we're referring to, right? The operations, the constraints we work in as developers, the business, and why we're creating that training. And so when we say the word training, we're just be very cognizant about how we use it so that when we do have conversations about learning, we know that that is a different conversation. There may be some overlap, right? But it's a different conversation coming at it from a different perspective.
Maybe we need to take up Adam's off of the official global L&D glossary there. So, Adam, when you've got a couple of hours up your sleeve, mate, can you start developing that glossary for us? That'd be great.
Yeah, I think at some point somebody started that, or I may have started a page on my blog at one point.
Good. I think we need more than a page.
I'll have to try to dig it back up. But this has been a great conversation, you guys. I need to actually try today to wrap this up before 9 because I do have a 9 a.m. phone call that I actually have to jump into, and I do not want to miss it. So I just want to say thanks so much, Con, for being the co-host today. Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony.
Co-guest, co-host, co-host, guest. Just all around entertaining Green Bay Packers.
Contributor extraordinary.
Paul, okay, not the same shirt, right? Just saying.
You watched it.
Yeah, just so everybody's clear, it's a fresh Green Bay Packers shirt.
I'm sure I saw that one last week.
It's all good. But anyways, so everybody, thanks so much for hanging out. God, we had a dozen people hang out for the whole hour and have this debate and this discussion. And I think it's something that I think we absolutely need to talk about. And I'm glad that we could all get together and have it in a civil forum, because in the past, these conversations have not gone so well. So this is a good start for us, and I think we will grow from here. So, Anthony, where can people find you, and why would they want to?
Yeah, assuming you would want to, at which point you should really seek a medical professional. I'm on the Twitters at AA_Altieri, and I am right back here tomorrow on Thursdays for Internet of Things, and tomorrow, very special guest, Kevin King from Plum Geek, who is going to talk about some of his robotics projects and some other really awesome stuff.
Yeah, it'll be great. I'm giving the reins over to Anthony tomorrow for Internet of Things Thursday. I will not be here, but the evil genius will tackle the whole entire hour for you all. So it'll be interesting. Maybe I'll try to dial in from the airplane if it's got Wi-Fi and see if I can at least watch. But I don't think they allow you to stream video. Con, thank you so much for joining us at 1 a.m. I guess it's 2 a.m. now in Australia. Man, you're awesome. Thank you.
No problems, Brent. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Anthony, for your contributions, and to everyone on the chat. It's been magnificent. People can find me at Learncoach on Twitter, and also probably on just the various LinkedIn forums. And I'm also the convener of Auslan, Australia's premier L&D tweet chat. So once a month, every second Tuesday of the month, we have Auslan, a tweet chat that I convene.
Outstanding. And I'm Brent Schlenker. I'm the Chief Learning Officer for Litmus.com, and we are a supporter of Learn Appeal. Thank you, Leslie, for reminding me about that. LearnAppeal.com is a fantastic organization. Hit up their website and support them. You can also hit up my blog at litmus.com/blog. You can find me on @bschlenker or @litmus. Next week is going to be outstanding fun. Litmus is a very, very big sponsor at the ATD International Conference and Expo. So we are very excited to be there. We will have a booth. Please stop by and see me if you're going to be there. We are also a major sponsor of the networking event at the Denver Art Museum, which has a special exhibit on samurai armor, which is, I checked it out online last night, and it's pretty darn cool stuff. So
yeah, I used to watch Shintaro. I remember that. Shintaro was good.
Remember that? There's going to be a band there. There'll be a DJ there. There's going to be drinks. There's it's going to be an all-around good time. So tons of fun, and look for me. I'll be the guy walking around with the camera and the tripod, trying to bag interviews and candid shots of everybody having a good time. So
Brent,
anyway, thank you very much for hanging out.
Are we blabbing next week from the conference? Sorry, quickly, are we blabbing again, or are you busy with the conference?
I'm certainly going to attempt blabbing from my hotel room once again. Yes.
Okay,
so
no problem.
It worked out okay last week while I was in Vegas for C3. So I think we'll go ahead and do that again next week. And I'm looking forward to that as well. So anyways, thanks again, everybody. My name is Brent Schlenker again, and we're out. We'll see you tomorrow. Adios.
Bye-bye.